French pop music is pop music sung in the French language. It is usually performed by singers from France, Canada, Belgium, Switzerland, or any of the other francophone areas of the world. The target audience is the francophone market, primarily France, which is considerably smaller than and largely independent from the mainstream Anglophone market.
The first distinct French pop music styles that emerged were the French rock and the yee, which originated in France during the 1960s. They were influenced by the American rock and roll of the 1950s. In the early days, this style of French pop music was easily distinguishable from the earlier category of French music called chanson in English. Eventually, the early French pop music and the chanson styles crossed over and combined. A style of pop music that emerged in Western and Southern Europe in the early 1960s. The French term yee was derived from the English yeah, popularized by British beat music bands such as the Beatles, a form of counterculture that derived most of its inspiration from British and American rock and roll. Additional stylistic elements of yee song composition include Baroque, exotica, pop, jazz, and the French chanson. France Gall, for example, was only 16 years of age when she released her first album and 17 when she won the Eurovision Song Contest for Luxembourg, singing the prototype bubblegum song, Poupée de Cire, Poupée de Sun. Another later hit by Gall included Les Tumeurs les Filles, a cover version of which by April March called Chick Habit appeared in Quentin Tarantino's 2007 film Death Proof. Baked pears, Austrian fairy tales and legends, ripe pears, melted butter, cinnamon sugar, old-fashioned rolled oats, almonds finely chopped, brown sugar, ground cinnamon, alternative sugars/spices/fruits, Austrian fairy tales. The tailor asked the hunter why he sat here idle in the forest instead of attending to his business. It opened into a kitchen with a small hearth on the left and on the right another door. Through this they went into a roomy apartment that contained 2 beds, a table and 2 chairs. The tailor thought that the little man meant by this to point out that they were to go through that door. So he took the hunter by the hand and led him through the door. "I am tired of it," said the hunter. "It would be better for me if I could go in search of adventures." Basic crust or lightly sprinkled oats. Filling. Add pears to a large mixing bowl. Sprinkle lemon juice, butter, sugars, flour, and spices over top, then very gently stir to coat evenly. Pour pear pie filling into pie shell. Top with crumb topping. Additional whipped creams/frosting. Everything flavored can be interchangeable. Decorate how you like. Golden Moon Magazine X Pear Recipes. Bake. Place pear pie crumble in oven on top of a hot baking sheet and bake until filling is bubbling and the crust is golden. Triple chocolate brownie mousse cake. Caramel apple cheesecake. Pecan pie cookie with gooey pecan pie filling. Oatmeal cranberry cookies. Perfect peach pie recipe has sweet fresh peaches tossed in cinnamon sugar. Cookie Monster cookies. www.facebook.com/beyondfrostingblog. The father of the princesses had promised the hand of his youngest daughter and his kingdom to the man who freed his daughters. Now he turned the ring with the wish that a dwarf might come and show him the way to the king. A dwarf appeared at once and led him to the king. In front of the king, the tailor maintained that he was the one who had saved the princesses, and the princesses confirmed it. The tailor came forth with the sword and thrust it into the neck of the dragon, thus slaying him and delivering the princesses. The tailor heard a roaring and flames sparkling in the air. The dragon came snorting into the garden and lay down on the bosoms of the princesses. While they stroked him, he fell asleep. Down there the tailor thought he had entered a new world. About 12 o'clock at night he woke up and already 2 dwarfs stood by his bedside who handed to him the finished garment. The princess put it on, and it fitted so well that hardly no other tailor could have made it better. The tailor got the promised reward, and ran home joyously. But here he no longer found the two wanderers, for they had journeyed on while the tailor was with the king. But the hunter was still more jealous of the tailor than before. They wanted to know what could possibly be in this hollow, so they agreed that one of them should be let down by the other. The hunter wove ropes out of straw and bound them together into a fresh rope that should serve for lowering. First the hunter let down the tailor. The hunter was then given a casket of gold, but banished from the land. The tailor married a daughter of the king and ruled happily and wisely over his subjects. Whether he is still alive I cannot tell. They had gone a long way, when they came to a large, beautiful meadow. In the middle of it lay a monstrous stone. At last they came out of the forest and found a highroad which led them on and on till they came to a city. As they entered, they observed signs of sadness on the faces of the people. When they asked why, they were told the following story. It so happened that this tailor was the very man who had had the task first imposed on him, and as they went in they met only mourners, for the tailor was bound to bring the dress to the king on the following morning. The tailor thought to himself, "See, perhaps you may save the tailors of this city from their distress." So saying, he went into the house of one of the tailors. They were tormented by hunger, and a well-spread table would not have been out of place there. The tailor, always thinking of his ring, turned it, and at once a great gulf yawned before them in the earth. Out of this cleft came first 4 dwarfs with a table, which they placed before the 2 wanderers. Then came 7 dwarfs with dishes, and after these 7, 5 more, bearing plates, vessels and chairs, and there was no want of wine. As the whole dwarf company had come vanishing, now it occurred to him that he had this magical ring. Turning it, in an instant 2 dwarfs stood before him, and they had brought with them his garments. The tailor took them and put them on. Meanwhile the 2 dwarfs disappeared. The hunter was almost beside himself with astonishment, and thought the tailor had made a secret treaty with the dwarfs. From this time he became more and more distrustful towards the tailor, and sought to get rid of him. Golden Moon Magazine X Pear Recipes. Now the dwarf was not so patient and quiet as before. He raised a loud cry. At this the kitchen at once swarmed with dwarfs, who all fell on the hunter and gave him a long and sound thrashing. At the regular hour the little man again appeared and warmed himself. The tailor wished to make up for the ill behavior of the hunter, so he put several pieces of wood on instead of one. The little man was evidently rejoiced at this, took a ring from his finger and put it on the finger of the tailor, saying, "Would you have any wish fulfilled? You have only to turn the ring on your finger, and I will be at once at your service." Then the dwarf bowed and vanished. The hunter, a rough, thoughtless fellow, was not a bit pleased that so little a sprig should dare to warm himself at his fire. So he took a stick of wood and struck the poor little man's fingers smartly with it. Enraged at this rudeness and hard-heartedness, the little man departed, saying, "You shall regret it," in a threatening tone. As night came on, the hunter prepared to take his turn at watching. Full of fears the tailor went to bed, while the hunter fearlessly went into the kitchen and made up a capital fire on the hearth. He put a piece of wood on the fire, thinking in this way he had done something that could please the little man. And in fact the dwarf was rejoiced, for he clapped the tailor on the shoulder and then left with a cheerful look. Softly the door opened and a dwarf clad in green came in. He went to the hearth, held his hands over the fire and looked at the tailor with a sorrowful glance. When the tailor saw this, he felt there was something uncanny. The first night the tailor kept watch. He placed a stool by the hearth in the kitchen and warmed himself, for it was late in autumn and cold. St. Gothic. The hunter had meanwhile laid himself down in one of the beds that were in the room and was sleeping soundly, when the hour of midnight approached. He felt there was something uncanny in this castle ever since the little man had vanished. Golden Moon Magazine X Pear Recipes. A tailor who was weary of his occupation wandered off into the world. After walking a whole day he came into a dark forest. There he heard someone singing. He went closer and saw a hunter sitting by a tree and singing to himself a little song. Austrian fruit recipes. Austrian fruit cobbler. Lacoste X one piece. www.x.com/Lacoste. When elegance meets adventure. Are you ready to uncover the hidden treasure? Crocodile pirate flag #Lacoste X one piece.
You see how dangerous it is to depart from the truth, the king said to the two eldest when they had done. You might have remained in prison to the end of your days, but for your straightforward brother that you thought was less than yourselves. A layer of jam in the bottom of the dish, which is typically berry flavored. Over that, you'll spread light and airy faux angel food cake mix. Salzburger Knockerl, cheese strudel, plump raisins, flaky pastry. Golden Moon Magazine X Pear recipes. Do you see the little wooden hut at the end of the road? The cobbler came back to the statue and told he was disappointed with the advice. But the statue said, "Take this little rod out of my hand and tap 3 times on your rag with it. Go there and cast in your meat. The devils have their workshop there. If afterwards they ask you what you demand as payment, answer, the old rag that lies on the bed." He ordered that the tree that brought forth golden but eatable pears should be transplanted to his palace, and made the father and his 3 sons places among his gardeners. And so they lived in plenty and were well content. The wishing rag, the golden goat, and the hat soldiers. Once there was a cobbler who was very poor, for he had nothing but a wife and an old she-goat. He could earn nothing more at home, and therefore decided to journey forth. Next day the goat was killed, the cobbler took a part of it, and went on his journey. He traveled all day and could reach neither village nor town. Tired out, the poor man lay down under a statue standing at the end of the road in order to rest there a little while. You see that I can earn nothing here, so therefore I go away tomorrow. Kill our goat that I may have something to eat along the way. The innkeeper also had a goat which looked like the goat that the cobbler had, so he decided to switch goats during the night. And so it happened. The goats were changed. The cobbler did so, and to his surprise gold pieces fell from the ears of the animal. The cobbler got glad when he saw the money. Quickly he thanked the statue and hastened homeward with the old goat. When he came to the statue he complained very sorely to it. But the statue gave him a rod, and bade the man to strike with it on the back of the goat. On the way, however, he got hungry and thirsty, and therefore turned into the very inn where he had stopped before. After having eaten and drunk, he was about to pay his reckoning. Then he led the goat into the room and struck 3 times with the rod on its back. The cobbler struck more and more violently, but still no money. All attempts were in vain. The beast sadly shook his head, but no gold fell from his ears. Then the cobbler knocked on his hat, and then the whole taproom overflowed with soldiers who threatened the host with death if he did not give up those articles. Full of terror, the host gave them up, and the cobbler returned a richer man to his house. The statue explained to the cobbler that his other magical articles had been stolen by the innkeeper. They were quite to his taste, but when he left, he ordered his servants to steal both the rag and the goat. This was done, but the hosts of his foes had already surrounded him. He had to yield, and he was led to the cobbler. The latter promised him pardon as soon as he should restore the goat and the rag. The new big 3, AXE body spray, AXE body wash, AXE deodorant. Wash your legs, feet, and everything else. AXE say #brat.
www.x.com/axe.
In this way, a king was overcome by an ill-used cobbler who had taken advice from a statue. As soon as the cobbler saw them, he made his army march out of the hat and commanded them to take the king and the others captive. The king was quite amazed at the army and was about to run away, for he felt himself too weak. "But won't you look at my pears first, lady? I have brought them all this way for the king. My father will be so sad if I do not give them to him." The boy sobbed. "My father says there are no finer pears in the whole kingdom." Anna Maria became a great queen, and if she is not dead by this time, then she is still living. Austrian folk tales. Young blood. Your bloodfest set times. 1 week to go. Holy fuck. Get your tickets. Don't be late. The food was delicious, for they were hungry. After the meal, they entertained one another for some time with their journey and the adventures that were still in store for them. She looked in, she saw a beautiful garment, as shining as the sun. Anna Maria must spin a linen garment, 50 ells broad, yet that might be passed through a finger ring.